Welcome back to another class. So in today's class we're going to see how to do quadratic equation by factoring, and this lectures is going to be for 2 days. So let's start with a warm-up. So let's take 5 minutes to answer this question. So I will say you should pause this video and then see if you can answer this question. Welcome back. Now let's see the answer to this question. So the answer to this question is, so we need to find the s-intercept. So let's find out what the s-intercept will be. And if you ask yourself, what is the meaning of s-intercept? S-intercept is when that graph cross the x-axis. So if I go to that graph real quick and see where it crosses the x-axis, and that point will be at this point right here. And what will be that point? That point will be 2, 0. And then if I ask you for the y-intercept, so if I ask you for the y-intercept is where that line cross the y-axis. So where that line cross the y-axis is going to be this point right here. And then that point will be 0, -2. And then in fact, if I ask you what is the slope of this line, without calculating the slope, you know that the slope will be positive. And then for the second one that we have on the right, what do you think the s-intercept is going to be? So my s-intercept is going to be what? It's going to be this point right here. And that will be what? And that point will be 2, 0. And then my y-intercept. So my y-intercept is going to be this point. And that point is 0, 2. And then if you look at that, the slope will be negative. And I know that everybody remember what a slope man looks like. So let's draw a slope man. So this is a slope man. So let's draw a slope man. So which means that if your line should look like this, the slope is positive. If your line should go like this, the slope will be negative. And then if your line is a vertical line, the slope would be undefined. The slope will be undefined. And then if your line is horizontal line, what will be the slope? The slope would be 0. And this is a slope man. Now let's see what we're going to learn today. As I said, our learning goal for this class will be that we are learning to demonstrate an understanding of how to factor a trinomial. Trinomial, if you look at that word trinomial, tri means 3. So, and then monia means that we have 3 terms. So this one means that you have 3 terms. So we're going to see how to factor trinomials, and then we're going to see how to write a quadratic equation in the standard form. And then we're going to learn how to use something called the zero product property. And then finally, we're going to see how to solve that quadratic equation using factoring. And let's start. So let's define what we mean by a quadratic equation. So a quadratic equation is an equation with the form that's going to look like this. In fact, what do you notice about this equation? First of all, I noticed that the degree is 2. The degree is 2. The term that has the highest exponent will be the degree, and if the degree is 2, we have a quadratic equation. And in this case, we are going to have our a, b, and then c are all real numbers, and in this case your a should not be equal to 0. Now let me ask you a question. What do you think? If a is equal to 0, what kind of equation we're going to get? So in this case, we are going to have, if a was 0, so let's say a is equal to 0. If a is equal to 0, then it means this a is 0, we have bx plus c is equal to 0. What kind of equation is this one? This one is a linear equation. It's just a linear equation. The reason is because the degree of that linear equation, the degree will be equal to 1. The degree right here will be equal to 1. So that will be a linear equation. That's not what we want. So that's why I said a should not be equal to 0. And then once we solve that quadratic equation, the solution of the quadratic equation of polynomials, they are called the root of the solution. We call them the root of the solution. In fact, sometimes we call them the y-intercept, sometimes we call them the solution too. So please take note of that. Now in today's class, in this lesson, we will consider two cases. So in this lesson, we are going to consider two cases, and then those cases will be that when a is equals to 1 and when a is greater than 1. But for today's class, our focus will be that we need to focus on when we have our a to be equals to 1, and then in the next lesson, we are going to focus on when a is greater than 1. And then another thing that I want us to have in mind is something called the zero product property, that simply says that if you have ab equals to 0, then this means it's either your a is equals to 0 or your b is equals to 0, or both are equals to 0, right? So let's see how we can use all of this to solve a question. Now the first question we have is this. Now for quadratic equation, make sure that one side of the equation you have all your trinomials, you have your three terms on one side, and then on the other side you have your zeros. Your zeros should be isolated on one side, and then the remaining terms should be isolated on the other side. So let's see what I have in this case. So as I said, we're looking at a case where a is equals to 1. So in this case, notice my a right here is 1, so I am good. So my a is 1, I am good on that one. And then what do I do? The next thing I have to do is to ask myself, what are the two numbers that if I add them, they should be equals to 14. And then if I multiply the same two numbers, it should be equals to 45. And what are those numbers? Those numbers, I like to start with multiplication, and those numbers would be 9 and 5, because 9 times 5 is 45, and 9 plus 5 is equals to 14. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write like this, and then I'm going to have something like this, and then you set it to be equals to 0. Those are your factors that you have, and then all you have to do is to put it right here, plus 9 and then plus 5. And then we're going to use something called the zero product property. The zero product property has said that x plus 9 is equals to 0, or x plus 5 is equals to 0. And then I need to find out what x will be. In this case now, if I subtract 9, what do I have? I notice that my x will be equals to 9, will be equals to negative 9. And then right here, if I subtract 5 and then I subtract 5, what do you notice? Or your x would be equals to negative 5. And that would be the solution to that equation. Now, what about example 2? For example 2, what do you notice? First of all, I notice that my a is not 1. My a is negative 1. So all I need to do is to find a way to make sure that negative is positive. And then the second thing I have to watch out for is, do I have all my three terms on one side? Yes. Do I have my 0 isolated on one side? The answer is yes. So what I need to do to that negative is that I need to divide everything by negative 1, or you multiply everything by negative 1. If you have done that, what are you going to get? You're going to have x squared plus 14x. That will be negative 14x plus 40 is equals to 0. And now I can now solve it. So if your a is not positive 1, you have to divide both sides by what you have in front of a. And now what do I do next? The next thing I have to do is I need two numbers. That if I add those two numbers, I should have negative 14 And then if I multiply those two numbers, I should have negative 40. So you go ahead and tell me what are those two numbers. Those two numbers will be negative 10 and negative 4, and that will give me 40. Also negative 10, negative 4 will give me negative 14. So in this case, all I have to do, I will start by writing this x like that is equal to 0, and then my negative 10 and my negative 14 will stay right there. And then I need to use something called the zero product property. And then the zero product property has said that x minus 10 is equal to 0, or x minus 4 is equal to 0. And then what is the next thing I have to do? The next thing I have to do is to add 10 to both sides. So I add 10 to both sides. So what do you have? X will be equal to 10. Or you add 4 to both sides. What do you notice? X would be equals to 4. So in this case, our answer to this question will be x is equals to 10 or x is equals to 4. Now let's look at question 3. For question 3, what do you notice? The first thing I want to do is that I notice that I don't have a positive one right here. I have a negative one. So what I want to do is I want to divide everything by negative 1. And then if I divide everything by negative 1, what do I have? So I have x squared plus 6x minus 10 is 30. And then the second thing that I notice is that this should be 0. But that's 30. So how can I make that 0? So I can subtract 30 on both sides. And if I subtract 30 on both sides, then I have x squared plus 6x minus 40 is equals to 0. And then what do I need to do next? The next thing I have to do, I have to find out two numbers. If I add them, I should have 6. And then if I multiply the same two numbers, I should have negative 40. And what is that number? That number will be, positive 10 and negative 4. So I have 10, negative 4. So in this case, then I have my x like this. I have another x like that is equal to 0. And then the first one I have positive 10 and negative 4. And then I'm going to use the 0 property that says that x plus 10 is equal to 0, or x minus 4 is equal to 0. So let's solve for x. Right here, subtract 10, subtract 10. So your x is going to be negative 10. Or then right here, you add 4. I add 4. My x is going to be 4. So which means my answer to this question is going to be x is equal to negative 10 and x is equal to 4. So now what I want you to do, these three questions on the right, I want you to do them, and then I'll be looking forward to seeing your solution. They are just like, the same questions that I've done on the left. Make sure you practice this question by yourself, and I am looking forward to seeing your solution. And then for check for understanding questions, I would also like that you practice this question too, and let me know what your solution will be. So let me help you out a little bit on this question. So notice on this one, you do not have 1, you have 6. So how can I make that 1? They are multiplying, so I have to divide both sides by 6. So first thing I want you to do, divide everything by 6. So if you do that, you have your n squared minus 3n minus 3 is equals to 1. And then another thing, make sure what you have right here should be 0. So what you have right there should be 0. So what I'm going to do is to make sure that I have 0 right here. And then I have 1, so I can subtract 1, subtract 1. So I have my n squared minus 3n minus 4 is equals to 0. And then you can proceed from here. And I'll be looking forward to seeing your solution. Now, what about for your exit ticket For your exit ticket in this class, I want you to click on this link right here. Make sure you click on this link and solve as many questions as you can solve. Remember, the more you solve these questions, the more you are going to master the skills. Please go ahead and solve as many questions as you can solve and let me know if you have a question. I'm going to see you in the next class. Take care. Bye.